viewers, wherever you are, hello and welcome to this new episode of your program Spectra. Investment and investing are as old as humanity itself. Since investing is the best way to increase the amount of money and wealth that you have, or at least to sustain and keep the value of your money and wealth. It is something that people use to fight inflation and, of course, to increase their riches. In this episode, we'll talk about investment in Egypt. What kind of incentives are there, and what kind of disincentives or impediments are in the way, and what kind of reforms need to happen. To shed more light on this, I'm really delighted to be accompanied by an engineer, an investor, and a businessman. He is a Canadian of Egyptian origin who has invested and did a lot of business between Canada and Egypt. I'm really delighted today to be accompanied by Edward Winnies. Edward Winnies, hello and welcome to the program. It's a real pleasure having you with us today.
Good evening, Muhammad. It is a pleasure to have you again.
Pleasure's all mine. And let me start here. Now I'm talking about investment. So when people transfer money from abroad to Egypt, the Egyptian government or the Central Bank of Egypt demands that I must provide the source of my money, which some people see as strange because, a country like Switzerland, for example, never asks such questions. And Switzerland is a hub for money transfer. So do you think that what the Egyptian government is doing is correct, or does this need to be reformed?
Actually, you cannot compare Egypt with Switzerland in this matter because there is many other countries like States, Canada, European countries. Also, they ask about the source of the money when you try to deposit it. If this money is coming through the banking channels, I believe there is no problem because the source already will be already known. But sometimes if you try to deposit or transfer money outside of the banking channels, this is the question coming: where is the source of this money coming from? Because as you know, Egypt and other countries have a contribution in against the money laundering, and this is meaning one of the processing they do it to prevent spread of the money laundering in Egypt.
The other point is the devaluation of the Egyptian currency. Over actually a very short time, the Egyptian currency lost a great amount of its value. And then there was the call for the floating of the Egyptian pound, which partially happened, and it's people see it as induced or government-controlled floating. It's not the real floating. And this creates two markets, an official market with a price and another market, a black market, with a much higher price. So when I transfer money through the legitimate channels to Egypt, I might be losing a big amount of money. So do you think this is a proper thing by the Egyptian government or the Egyptian central bank to do?
Usually in any country, this is one channel, which will be the legal channel to buy or sell the hard currency, whatever it's coming from each country. But it's not normal things that you have more than one market. Well, what the other people calls it is there is a regular market and the black market. This is illegal to have two markets at the same time. And this is what makes the devaluation of the Egyptian pound from up to down. This is one thing. The other thing is your Egyptian pound is connected to the US dollar. And as you know, recently, the American Central Bank changes the interest rate on the US dollar several times, and this is make unstable situation for many local currencies in many countries.
It is true, but at the same time, in a country like Canada, for instance, like we don't even use the term like floating of currency, because like it's a hard currency. Canadian dollar is a hard currency, and there's a complete free market. So it's supply and demand. So the value of Canadian dollar vis-a-vis, or like, in with regards to other currencies, is something that changes every second. And so if I go and do an exchange from the bank or from a money, shop or whatever, the difference would be very minimal. But in Egypt, it's a big, big difference. So in one place it would be X, and the other, in the black market, it would be X plus 4, 5, or even 8 pounds.
Maybe the answer is the word speculation. Many people in Egypt try to make a speculation on the US dollar. And this is what creates a black market, and they make there is more than one exchange rate between the Egyptian pound and the US dollar. But this is supposed to be not exist, because this is against the law. Here in Canada also it is floating. Sometimes the Canadian dollar against the US dollar, it's come up and down, up and down. This
Absolutely,
is normal. This is normal, the same as even now. But in Canada, we don't have the black market because it is not permitted, and this is not able to do. That is
because here, if I try,
even some people in Canada try to make a black market, it is legally not permitted.
Yes, but here, if I try to make a black market, I will not succeed, because the actual price of the currency is the best possible. So I cannot. But in Egypt, it's a different situation. So people living abroad, some people might resort to, exchanging the money through other channels other than the legal or the legitimate channel, to get more gains.
Yeah, that's maybe the government need to prevent speculation on the US dollar by unauthorized people.
Okay.
This is the problem of the government, to make the exchange rate for the US dollar is stable.
Okay.
Like any other country. So
the speculation would be the biggest problem. It's the source of this difference rate.
Exactly. This is one of the major reasons that the floating is not stable and is changing from time to time, and this is done by unauthorized people.
And there's a big discrepancy between the black market and the official one.
Exactly.
Okay, now moving to like what is called like hot money, or like sort of quick investment, really. Some people might not see it as an investment at all, but what happens is that I might go to Egypt and I might invest by putting my money into an Egyptian bank through like I can put hard currency or Egyptian pounds, and I would benefit from the high interest rate that I would get. But at the same time, due to the rise in inflation, the bank tends to increase, the interest rate gradually. So there's always, an increment. There's always an increase every now and then. So if I put my money in the bank today, for example, I might get 15% interest rate. Then, but a year later, they would raise it to 18%. So I might come and say, okay, I want to take my money out of the bank here with the 15% and put it through the other channel to get 18%. They tell me, okay, you're welcome to do that, but you'll lose some money. There will be a penalty for this. So is this something that would be an incentive? Does this something encourage you to put money in the bank in Egypt?
It's not a matter to put the money in Egypt. It is the same even here in Canada. If you have some deposited money for a period of time and you want to break it, you also lose some money. For example, the interest rate on the Canadian dollar 5-6 months ago, it was around 4% for something. Now it's become 5% and it's up to 5.5 also.
Yeah.
It's the same situation. So you cannot say it is only for bank in Egypt. It is the same because all the economic now subjected to most the reason affect all the economic in the many countries.
But again, the rate of inflation is not the same. So like, yeah, there is a high rate of inflation everywhere in the world, but there's a big difference between 5%, 10%, and 60%. There's a big difference.
Yeah, exactly. Like it's a big difference between country population 100 million and above, and the country whose population 30 million.
Mm-hmm.
It's a proportional issue, you know.
Okay, yeah. So population, increase in population, uncontrolled, increase in the population might be a major factor here. So now moving to investment, real investment here, and talking about real estate market. So recently we had a couple of people try to invite developers and real estate markets to come to Canada, and they would make a form of an exhibition to show these different projects that are made in Egypt, and to try to convince people here in Canada to buy some kind of apartments or houses and whatnot in Cairo, in Alexandria, in the North Coast, in Sinai. What is your evaluation? Like, what is your assessment of these attempts, like these several exhibitions that were done here for Egyptian real estates? How successful do you see them?
I see till now it is not successful.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe the main reason for that you don't use a professional tools or professional people to make the investor explore the best investment opportunities in real estate in Egypt. Especially we have many objects, many projects in different places. And to achieve this goal, you must have some tools with more experience. That is one reason. The second reason is that you must show that the government is offering the best way to support the purchaser or the people, especially Egyptians who live abroad, to invest in real estate in Egypt. They must give them a guarantee to avoid in future any legal problems or financial problems that could be happen with the developer.
Okay, so they're not given guarantees that they like. So you think that the government should be part of the agreement between the buyer and the seller? So, for instance, here in Canada, there is sort of a standard contract that is made between party A and party B, and like the government is in the picture as well. So it's not up to each and everyone to make whatever clauses they want to add in the the contract, and we're not free to put any kind of clauses or conditions in fine print, which might be very different in Egypt. Like in Egypt, you might have a contract made of 2 pages or 50 pages, and a lot of things that are put in fine print.
Yeah, exactly. You know that if any issues or problem happen between a purchaser and the developer, it goes automatically to put the blame on the government.
Mm-hmm.
This is always the same way. So the best way for the government is thinking and generate tools which can be a guarantor or a guarantee for the purchaser against any dispute in the future when they wanted to invest in the real estate sector in Egypt.
Okay.
Without waiting to some disputes and so on, and go to court and follow the other steps, which it's actually for any investor, it is a waste of time and a waste of money.
The second thing here again is that many people would say that the Egyptian real estate market is already saturated, actually. It's not really worth your while to invest in real estate in Egypt because it's, again, at the end of the day, it's a matter of supply and demand. And the supply is much higher than the demand. So if I buy, let's say, an apartment today in Egypt, and then I want to sell it later on, I'd find a very hard time doing that because there is an incredible amount of supply, and I need to sell my apartment. I need cash money, but all the other developers would offer installments. You just put a minimum down payment, and then they'd offer you installments, sometimes interest-free or with low interest for a long period of time. That can be 5 years, 7 years, or 8 years. So is it really worthwhile to invest in real estate in Egypt?
For sure it was, because the government need to build 2.5 million homes each year because the increase of the population. That is the main reason. The other reason also that the market now always hot, no lose happen in real estate in Egypt. Even whatever, if you purchased a home even 2 years ago or 5 years ago. Also, the inflation is affected the prices, but still there is a great demand for new homes, and not only homes, also for commercial sector, for services sector, for offices, for many other kind of real estate. So it is considered with a high interest profit you can achieve in the Egyptian real estate market.
But again, let's talk about inflation and the valuation of the currency as well, because let's say a couple of years ago, I bought a house for, let's say, 7 million Egyptian pounds. Today, I want to sell this house, and yes, I get an offer for 14 million, so double the amount. So I get £2 for every pound I spent. But when I try to buy things, with the 14 million, they will buy me much less things than what 7 million would have bought me 5 years ago because of the devaluation of the currency. So did I really make profit here? No, actually, I lost. Like I have a bigger sum of money, the number is bigger, but it's a smaller value.
The valuation of the local currency and the inflation always goes together in every country, not just in Egypt. So you will subject it to the same situation anywhere.
Mm-hmm.
If you invested in Egyptian pound, this means you can have you gain your profit in Egyptian pound. But now we want to change it from Egyptian pound to US dollar. Could be some risk, and this risk could be calculated when you thinking about investing, not just in Egypt, but in any.
But even if I don't want to if I don't want to exchange it, if I don't want to transfer it to any foreign currency, but let's say I want to buy something. So 7 million Egyptian pounds used to buy me, let's say, like 7 amazing cars 5 years ago. Now, the 14 million today will not buy me the 7 amazing cars it used to buy me 5 years ago. So again, like it's because cars, for instance, you get, it's bought with US dollars, so you just buy it with the equivalent in Egyptian pounds. Same thing for all other commodities, be it food, be it clothes, or anything else.
Yes, you're right. But it is the same happening in every country. But for Egypt, because of big population, the inflation is much higher.
Mm-hmm.
It's a proportional issue between the inflation ratio and the population of the people living in the country.
Mhm.
It is, you cannot compare it with a big number with a small number.
So only the population, or
The
is there?
population is the main factor for many things.
Mhm. Okay, yeah.
And also
So,
it is the one strong point for the market. When you invest in a market, in a big market with a higher population, it's more secure profit in future than you invest in a country with a smaller population, because there is always more demand required.
exactly. So population is not only a weakness, it's a strength at the same time. It's a double-edged sword, really. Like
Exactly.
it's,
Yes.
yeah. So maybe the government needs to maybe better utilize or be more resourceful, maybe, with the population. Try to use it as a power, as a strength rather than a weakness.
It's already a strength in somehow, but a weakness in other side.
Mm-hmm.
How you compromise between two situations? This is sometimes maybe you invent a new regulation, new rules, but always you can use this point in double sides.
Absolutely. Now, the last question here in investment is investment in general. Like, again, when I come and invest in Egypt, I am investing in hard currency. So I bring like, Canadian dollar, US dollar, euros, pound sterling, whatnot. But again, when I sell, I'm getting the Egyptian pound, the unstable Egyptian pound that is subject to incredible devaluation, that has a lot of fluctuation in, in value. So is this an enticement, an incentive? Does this encourage you to do investment in Egypt in the agricultural sector, for instance, or any other sector, in industry, for example?
There is many sectors you can invest in Egypt, not only in real estate, but there is in agriculture, in
Yeah.
manufacturing, in many ways it is available, and the government is encouraging people to come to invest in many kind of projects. So don't look to the current situation as it is will be last forever. It is just temporary, because there is many international issues affected this situation. And when this situation is ended, then your investment in Egypt will be more profitable than any other country.
Last point here I'd like to ask you about is, like, you have a lot of experience in investment between Egypt and Canada. You did investment again with the European Union, like with Italy and whatnot, and so on. So would you like to give us some prescription or advice for anyone who's watching us now, from your past experience, so that they can maybe follow your footsteps?
Advice in which
In investment. So like people who would like
in
to be.
investment, usually you must calculate the risk
Mm-hmm.
before you enter any investment in any country or in any place. There is some like to call a checklist. You must follow all the items the checklist, and after that you make the decision. But you're putting in your consideration that there is a risk, and some places it is very high risk, but in the other side it will be more profitable than other places with lower risk, with lower profit. So always before we started your investment, you must do your, as you said, you do your homework, all the information, transparency in information, the rules, the population, the policy, the enforcement of law, and then you get to your the percentage of your risk. You can take it and decide if you accept it or not.
So you have to do your, due diligence, proper study of the market, do a feasibility study, and always, like you said, always put the risk factor, but it should be, like you said again, a calculated risk. So I shouldn't just make a leap in the dark. No, I should at least test the terrain before I step on it.
Exactly.
But there's always a risk, of course. Absolutely.
Any business have a risk. If there is no business without a risk. If you accept to go in business, whatever investment or any other kind of business, you should have a percentage of risk.
Absolutely. At the end of this interview, I really have to thank you very much for this very fruitful discussion and the valuable information you provided us with. Thank you very much, and really looking forward to having you again on the program.
Thank you very much for you.
Thank you. Take care. And dear viewers, if we were to recap here to come to a conclusion, always capital is a coward. Capital is always afraid. And whenever you want to put money in any place, you must be sure that you're going to get some kind of revenue. It doesn't have to be a major revenue, but I must know that I'm not losing. So maybe, we can whisper into the ears of the the officials in the Egyptian government that maybe, the Egyptian land is a very, very promising land for investment. It's a country very rich in natural resources, in human resources as well. It's a great market for investment. It's a land with incredible history, very beautiful beaches, shining sun, full of incredible amount of very, very valuable natural resources. It's a very young country. We have a very young population in Egypt as well. So all of these things are like great factors and great assets, really, for any economy to develop and flourish. So maybe the government needs to, step in and try to enforce some kinds of laws and regulations that would comfort the investors and would guarantee that they are always in good hands. The Egyptian government has taken some steps. This is something that we commend and value, but probably there is more to be done. And hopefully maybe the best is yet to come. Dear viewers, until we meet again, thank you very much for watching. Please take good care.